Alright, so let's get started. The idea with this time is that we'll go through the HIF-BAE homework because I think it's actually pretty good. You will get through a lot and you will actually go through all the things we've talked about for the last couple of weeks. The idea is that I'll be doing most of the typing, but I'll be asking you guys a lot of questions to help me and figure out, well, what do we actually need to do and how do we do it? So I'll mostly just be doing all the keyboard stuff, and then you guys will be doing the thinking, and I'll of course try to suggest if you get stuck. But that's the overall idea. So the first part,
You're recording, right?
yes I am. So the first part is simply open the index.html file in a browser and see that it works. Check, it does. We can see things. We have the okayest products out there. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to render some test product names. To do this, we need to create an array of test product names that contains test product names. So let's start by doing that, creating the array. So how do I create an array? And what should I call it? And what should I type? Someone, please help.
It was like functions ready to create an array. So we can just like, let's say, let products equal that function. I don't remember the function name.
So like this.
No. We call function. We don't create function.
Right, but now we shouldn't use the getting those is considerably later in this project. So that's first all the way down here. Right now we just want an array with some product name, test product names in, nothing more.
Yeah.
So to go easy mode first.
Yeah, const test product names equals square bracket, and then we'll create some 2 or 3 objects.
Mm-hmm. Which one should we go for? Flat screen?
Yeah, flat screen. ID 1 is flat screen, name flat screen, price is 4,000.
Yeah, but we should just test product names.
Oh,
that
just
implies
product
only
names.
strings in the first place.
Okay.
Alright, now we have an array of those. Then now we need to render them. So we need to do the following. Select the URL that is child to the section called products in JavaScript. So how do we do that? So how do we select? We have this down here.
We should make a class or ID for the UL.
We actually have everything we need here, but let's go with that solution first.
Okay.
So let's create an ID. What should we call it?
Let's section product.
Select the product.
It must be products, I think, based on here.
It doesn't actually have to be called anything. We could call it foobar, but that would be a very bad description. Alright, so how do we find it?
Get element by ID or just the query selector.
So get element by ID, and then we have product UL. And what do I do with this?
And
Variable.
Right, so this can work, but what the task actually says is actually a bit specific here. It says that we need to find the UL that is a child to the section called products. So what this specifically means is that we have a section here with a class products that has a UL inside. And this is the one we should find. So we can actually go specifically from that description and say, all right, well, query selector, if I can spell. Then we can just find products UL. Then we find the first UL inside the first div called products. And we can log that out and then check that things are working so far. And let's also log the test product names just for funsies. So you can see we get the UL. As we can see here, it's around there. And we get our array. Alright, so far so good. Then we need, for each product name in the test product names, create an li, set the inner.html, append the li. Alright, so how do we iterate over test product names?
We should like make a loop inside the array.
How do we make a loop?
for
Use for each.
And then what?
For I equal to 0. It's necessary to write let because I try without let it's working fine.
Yeah, but then you get into some other stuff, and because technically, I think the reason why that's working is that if you don't have it, JavaScript will just create it, but you can't really be sure where. So you could technically have something on, if you don't specify it, it'll create it on window. So you end up doing this, which can possibly break all the programs. If they also do that, then you suddenly have multiple things using the same AI, which can be really bad. So we created it with let to ensure that it only exists inside this loop. And
Okay, and link test product.link and I++.
Yep.
Then we take all.
All right. Yes. And then we should create an li. How do we do that?
Create
Inner
element.
still. Yeah.
Create element li.
And assign it to arrow. And I prefer const. So set the inner HTML. And I have already told you I dislike people doing that, so we do inner text. And then we should append the.
What was that again? Set the inner HTML. That's a source of like a lot of hacking.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I can do technically I can do this.
Oh, and then you run the script on that tag. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then I certainly have JavaScript on your page. Well, technically, this has happened so much. Like, people have done this so much, and there have been so many security issues that Chrome will actually prevent this specific case from happening. It'll literally just error out in the console and says, no, someone just did something bad here, and you probably didn't intend that. But that's the simple case. There's a bit more advanced case, which is like this. So image where we set the source to doesn't exist.png, and then we do on error equal console.log hacked. And this will actually, what will happen here is that, all right, it will insert an image tag into the li. Then it will try to load this PNG file that doesn't exist, which will cause an error to happen, which means it now runs my code. And like, this is the simple case of me console.logging hacked. I could have done much worse if I wanted to. Like, I could have done document.body.append child.
Can you hack a bank?
Like, if your bank is doing this, I would recommend getting a new bank.
Yeah, change your bank.
To be honest.
Yeah.
So we can do const s equal document.create element script s.source equal hack.js, and then return s, and then we call it. This will roughly do the same thing, but will get you through the security from before. So that's why you should not use inner HTML.
That's good to know, because
yes, lots of tutorials recommend it, lots of tutorials are wrong. That's all I can say about it. And it annoys.
Can you just slow down a bit?
Yes.
Thank you.
I get especially randy about that part because it happens a lot and people do it wrong. And
No, I mean, for the rest of the
yeah.
You know,
the other part was good. It was so exciting.
I asked the question, the inner HTML, because he said it last time, but I couldn't remember what the reason was. But it's good to kind of like
Yeah, it's
illustrate.
really nice when he explained
illustrate. They said, okay, whenever you see an HTML, think of what you're doing, because it probably is not a good idea.
Yeah, it's probably not doing what you want.
Yeah.
There are libraries that you can find that will actually clean up the HTML to get around these issues, but they're quite big. And the only case where you really need them is if you want the user to be able to write something with a rich formatting. For example, they need to be able to bold things and such. Unless you're actually doing a custom parser to create the HTML yourself. Don't trust the user to create the HTML. Then you should really clean these things up, or just don't allow it. When in doubt, don't allow it. If you think you're sure, don't allow it. You need to be sure, otherwise you will have a security issues and someone will leak all your customers. So, yeah. Alright, next part, more happy news. Append the li to the ul. Alright, so what should I write to do that?
li.append child ul or reverse.
What ul?
This ul, the one with the child of the products.
So what's that variable called? Is it called ul or product ul?
It is a product SUL.
Yes, that one. So let's try this. A whole lot of nothing happened. So why? And even worse, if holy shit. Products. The UL is gone.
Oops.
So
Because
We've been hacked.
That's because the append is reverse. We have to append the li to the ul.
yes,
exactly.
So I said this one. I said when I said li append child, and in the end I said maybe reverse.
But
So she
Anyway, but I mentioned two times.
we're here to learn. For every mistake that you make like these, you will never make that mistake again.
Yeah, it's like something that always make me confused. I don't know
Yeah.
which one must come first.
Yeah.
Which one must come
That-
first.
Well,
That's very smart strategy. She was the prosecutor and the defense attorney at the same time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's me. It
And the
always
judge.
worked. It always worked.
And the judge.
Not my job.
So let's see if this works better. Wait,
Half life.
we have things on the screen now. So that was actually why I specifically did not say anything to this, because I mean it's good as lesson as anyone to learn on this, because I know several of you have asked about this several times, and like this is why the order matters. Otherwise your things will disappear and not appear.
Just think it's interesting that I wrote like about 40 lines of code, and then when I saw the Benjamin solution, it's like 10 or 15 lines. Something like that.
But we'll get these things down. For now we need to write it out, then we'll clean it up. So, but now we have the first part working, render test product names. Then we can go to the render products function. So when test products can be rendered, let's create a function that does this. So we create a function called render products. It has one parameter, products, which is an array. So how do I write that? How do I create a function? What do I type?
Function,
and render.
Should just be called render. Render products.
render product.
All right. Should it take any arguments?
Yeah, array.
Yes. Which is named what?
Array.
Products name.
Array.
Test product
No.
names? No, it should take products. It should take products.
Yes.
That's
It
a-
actually gives us a name for it here. Products.
Products.
But that you can use anything.
No, not really, because they had the assistant file that's going to rendering all these.
So right, you're right. It can be anything. Like I can call render products and give it 4. It doesn't make sense. But JavaScript doesn't allow us to prevent me from passing shit in here. The best way we can do that is say, all right. So if it's not an array, console.error. This is garbage. That way we can technically prevent it from happening. But let's be reasonable people and assume that people don't call our functions wrong.
No, but I think this exercise you need to pass the products because
Yeah,
it will,
but
if you pass anything else,
that-
it won't work.
Yeah, we do. That's correct. And JavaScript relies a lot on people calling your functions, calling them correctly. And that's just part of how JavaScript is. And the thing is, we can call this whatever we want in here. We could call it products, we could call it array, we could call it test product names. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is that we... The what?
The argument that you will pass.
Yeah. The important thing is what I pass into it. It's not what I call it inside. What I call it inside is just how I refer to it in here. So right now I don't have anything called products. Apparently I do. I don't know where that's from.
Yeah, because there's other Java's loading.
It's the IDE finding all other things. All right. So now we have a function. It has one parameter, which is an array. It should work like that. So let's just move this in here. Boom. Change this. And then we can call it, hopefully. So we do render products, test product names. And that should hopefully still give us the same result, and it does. So now we have a function that we can easily call that has the benefit that, alright, now if I pass in some other things, I pass boo and whatever this is, it'll also do those things. It doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, that's what I meant, like from the beginning. If I don't want to call the products, I can call it array, but I should use it inside the function.
Yeah, inside the function it should be named
Exactly.
something reasonable. Alright, so now we need to improve the function. Now representing a product by only its name is a bit too simple. A product usually has a price, a rating, a specific ID, a name, and countries it ships to. If we have to represent a product with that kind of data in JavaScript, we use an object with the following keys: ID, name, price, rating, ships to. In the main.js file, there's a function available to you called getAvailableProducts. Calling this function will return an array of products. There can be from 0 to 30 products in the array. So let's improve the product name so that it still only shows product names, but uses the products from calling getAvailableProducts. So first thing first, let's try to call getAvailableProducts. So what do I type to get that?
We should first make a const for an array. It's called products, and it's equal that function name.
Equal to get available, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we need to call this.
Yeah.
And then in here we need to do something here, because right now these are no longer strings, they're objects. So if we do this, we'll get a lot of object, which is not what we want. So what do I need to change in here? I need another loop.
Or you can just get directly the key.
Yes. So how do I do that, and where do I do it?
You can do test products name.
Now what you want to do actually exactly? Can you say it again?
So now that we're passing in objects in here, we're not passing in an array of strings, we're passing in an array of objects. Now we need to get the name out of the product. Now it's no longer just product names we get here, it's actually a product. So down here, because we're doing this, we just get these object things. So how do I change this to give me the actual name of the product?
Product sub I dot name.
Yep. Exactly. And as we can see, it returns different things every time that function. So what I changed is here, it now says product.name and not product name.
Oh, okay.
And now we should do that for all.
Yep, now we should do that for a lot more things. Something here in HTML, there's a lot of bogus stuff someone here is typing. Let's not do that. So what's the other parts we have in this? We have ID, price, rating, ships to. I don't think we're supposed to print the ID. So how do we write out the price? What do I need to type to get the price written out?
The price. It's same, just copy paste. Same. Again, yeah, and just to change it to price.
And then we probably need to do like li and
Price li.
yep. So one thing that they, for some reason, first tell us further down is that we actually need to wrap all of this in another UL. So we need to create a row UL. And then inside that row UL, we can now append our things. And then that row UL should be really confusing, but assigned inside another thing. So we have this is mostly a thing with semantic HTML, but I think Chrome could still work without us doing this, but for the sake of being reasonable, append child row UL. So we create an li like we did before, and then we create a UL. This li should be appended to our product UL. So the reason why we're doing this is because in HTML to have lists and lists and lists and lists, you can technically put ULs inside ULs inside ULs, but it's more clean and you'll get a better result if you do UL, LI, UL, LI, UL, LI, because you have a list where one of those items is another list. You don't have a list inside a list. It's a very, very tiny difference, but it does actually matter for some of the results here. These things here, as Ricardo said, we could literally copy paste them around. But we are developers, we dislike copy pasting because that means if something here is wrong, we need to update it in multiple places. So can we do something so we don't have to repeat these 3 lines all the time?
You can make function.
Yes. So what should I type?
Function and
Create list.
for example, abandoning child, so we can put or abandoning li.
Append li?
Yeah.
What should we take as arguments? Should I take all the products as an argument for this? So let's go back to this. What's the difference between these two right now? So there's the variable names here. They're different, but that doesn't really matter. That's just because we can't reassign this up here because it's a const. Then we have these, which are different.
Label or the...
Yes. So let's call it a label. And then we need. So let's actually just start out with this. So if I just take all of this, move it up here, and then I replace this with a label, as we talked about, then it yells at me because this thing, it doesn't exist as a variable in this function. So how do we solve that?
Yeah.
Wait, that's
So I just do let row UL. I mean that technically solves that error, but a more clean way of doing that would be like we can just pass it in. And then we can do append li, so the label is the product.name and the row li, which should really be the row UL, but that's another thing. And then we can duplicate this and say, alright, do it for the price. What else do we have? We have the rating.
ID and chip.
Yeah, I don't think we're supposed to print the ID.
I
It's not here in the samples. So
We greenhorns, we print the ID.
well, let's print the ID then. It should probably be first. And then we can remove this.
It doesn't matter, it's the same. But it's the same code for everything.
We could also technically do ships too.
Yeah, but we have to. Actually.
Yes, but if you do this, that actually totally did not print what I would expect, but I'm very actually quite satisfied with that. So, other than this being horribly misaligned. What's...
Just because
It's because there's
in the end we should make the country, ship to country, we make it also appending for small OL inside the LI, and then we append LI again inside.
Yeah, that's for these. But
when you do it like that, all has their place.
so we're printing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just curious because I remember it having much better alignment when I did this on my desktop. But okay, let's go with this. So yes. Next exercise, which is technically optional, is getting these, the ships 2, into another UL.
Maybe you should align like
On
that.
week 3, the format improved.
Things get considerably better as we expand on this. So let's go out and create this. So right now we have this structure, and you can see I added this UL I talked about in here. So how do we go and create this here down here? Do we just do another set of these?
Yeah.
That sounds very reasonable. So then we shouldn't do that. Ships 2 row. Ships 2 row. Well, all right. And then we need to get all of these ships 2 added in there. So ships 2 was an array as far as I remember. So product.ships2, and then we need to loop that. So how would you recommend me do this? Should I just create another loop like this? Should I do a for each function? And in here, well, if we already have this append li function that just takes a label. The destination is itself a string, and then we just need to give it the UL to append to. And that will actually work, I expect at least. No.
No, it's with just number. No, it's appended, but it's taken as a number.
The what?
I just took it as a number, how many counters you sent to in the NDS.
Yeah, that's... But the thing it complains about here is that ships 2 is not set.
Yeah.
It's because...
We need to map. Good.
There we go. Something is almost better. No, still off. So what's going haywire here? Well, time for some live debugging. So we have each of these is...
I think the ships was added to the...
Yeah, there shouldn't be an UL. Can you open the HTML again?
Yeah, I think that what's going wrong is...
There's one too
Should
many
be row
ULs.
L append, yeah.
Yeah, there's one too many ULs.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's what was supposed to happen. So that's what happens if you copy paste code too much. Alright, so that's actually what we needed to do for this. We just needed to render out the items here. Did some of you type along, or did you just look? And in which case, if you did type along, did you need some time to type it out? I'm looking at you, Hale, specifically.
I got that far.
All right. Let's just go to the next one then. It should be 2.
You're not gonna delete all this JavaScript later, right?
No. I'm gonna put this on GitHub.
Okay.
Alright, so continue work on your homework regarding the HIFBay from the previous week. Please copy the file from last week into this HIFBay homework folder. We don't need to do that because we can just use the same one. A very normal use case for a product site is that a user wants to search for some products or get products that only ships to his country. Let's implement that functionality for a user. But first, let's figure out what happens on a conceptual level here. So some kind of event happens. For example, a user searches for a product. We need to listen for that event. Then when that event happens, we need to filter the products the user wants. Then we should render those products. So in other words, we need to add an event listener somewhere, we need to filter somewhere, and then we need to call render products. So specifically, when the user writes something in the search input field, that would be this one, I assume. The product should be updated to only include products that matches that name. So essentially, if I search chocolate, it should only show things that actually has chocolate in the name. For example, sloppy chocolate. So first thing first.
You should add
The what?
the input.
Yeah, the input is actually already here. We just
need the class.
we already have a we technically can just use the search class around it.
Oh, okay.
We don't really need to touch the HTML for that. But how do I go about getting that input? So const input equal what?
Query, document query. What was that search?
Search class.
That country.
Space input.
Yes, exactly. And then we need to
Add this one.
so what it,
Event listener.
And then what should we do here?
Yeah, we should.
We should compare. Like we can add the first. We should prevent default.
We don't need to do this in this case because it's not a submit event. We're actually listening every time they're typing. So we don't need to prevent default on that.
So we just now will take the value.
Check the value.
And then if the value in the name.
And how do I type that?
Like if and value equal that is what's called product name.
Right, so there's a technical problem with this. We don't have anything called product here right now.
Yeah, that's why we can put up in the function product.
So you wanted to put it up here. So up in the render products function.
No.
So the render product function should only worry about rendering products. It should not worry about filtering on products.
No.
There's something that the function that we can say includes or something.
Yeah, so that's also part of it. So we could have done name include value, but we still don't have a product to do that on right now. We're not in any sort of loop or anything. So last time we talked about, or I think it was the time before that actually, we talked about array.filter.
Yeah.
Yes. So we can just do products.filter.
Yes.
Then we get our product, and then we can do dot includes value, and then we get the matching products. And then we can call our render products function. So, all right, so far so good. Let me search for a computer. And then it just keeps adding them down here. So every time I do search, as you can see, the scroll bar gets longer and longer, and it just keeps repeating them.
So we just add in the beginning of the function up inner like empty string.
So products ul dot inner HTML is equal to an empty string.
Yeah.
That's the really short way of actually cleaning them. And one of the places where using inner HTML is okay because you are assigning it to nothing, and that can't have security issues, pretty much by definition.
But even if I text empty was working also.
Yeah, inner text will also work, but in this, I like using inner HTML because we make it very clear that we're removing the HTML from this. Whereas inner text, it could, at least in my opinion, be a bit confusing. Are you just updating the text, maybe inside a couple of sub-elements, or what happens? In this case, I'm just saying, blow everything away that's inside it. I don't want it. But that's, again, it's a personal preference. So now if we search for, so if I search for carrot, I don't get carrot.
Yeah, because we need to change to uppercase or the lowercase.
Exactly. So just like that. Alright, now we have Nokia. So I can search for Nokia, alright. I can't search for Nokia with a capital then.
No, because we should change both.
Exactly. So chalk and chalk. Awesome. And I can search for orc if I want to for some reason.
But if we write fish, for example, yeah.
Any problem?
Because it was like it's confused for me a little bit. Because I was trying first to make it an array, the name, and then I search inside because it was not working.
If you type a space on the fish first type a space and fish.
Then it won't work. The reason why this works is because fingers match.
Fingers match because there's a space before it.
Yes. So, but this is getting into something called fuzzy matching, which is what Google does if we spell something wrong. It says, "Did you actually mean this instead?" And sometimes it just searches for that for us because it knows that is probably what you meant.
Yeah.
But that's a lot more difficult to implement because then you need to get into compare how close strings are, and then you can also start doing things like, this is actually what you search for, but these things looks like it almost. So you probably want to see those also, which is way out of scope for what Hack Your Future is going to teach you.
Yeah.
You could always do that in your final products because it's a fun exercise to actually start working with, and you can get some really, really good results if you do things like that. Right, so now we can search products. Now, showing product that ships to country, which is technically optional, but we're going to do it. So let's help a user to avoid spending too much time looking for products that cannot be shipped to the user's country. When the user selects a country in the ships to select tag, the product should be updated with the product that ships to that country. So break this task into smaller tasks. How can you get the value from a select list? It's a little tricky, but we can Google. And then we need to figure out how to, if a product does ship to a country, and then we can use the includes function, same as we did with strings. So the first thing first is we have this. So whenever something is selected here, the values needs to change. All right, so assuming that we have the HTML, that would be this.
Here I add one option more because she didn't select something before.
The what?
I add one option like it's empty, like or choose something because otherwise like
You can't clear it.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we can do this after this one. Let's just start by making things simple and just keeping to the text here. But that's definitely a good one to remember to do. So again, we can find this select by doing country select. So up here, what do I need to type? Const select equal what? Document query selector. And what's the exact string?
It was select also or dot select.
The country space select.
Yes. Because we're finding the div with the
okay.
class country, and inside that we're finding a select. Great. Then we need to listen for that changing. How do we do that?
Add event.
And what's the event called?
On a click.
One change.
Yep. on change. Click will means every time we're actually selecting the box, and possibly also when we're selecting a value in it. But the thing is with these is that you can change the value by doing this with a keyboard. Then that will not work with click. That will work with change. So yes. So what do we need to do in here?
Here we start to make if it's equal, like if the value.
If what?
We should make the value value. It's select the value. And now if value equal the value was had, for example, if value equal Denmark, we should, yeah.
But how about, so you want us to do like if value equal Denmark, if value equals Sweden?
No.
That seems really complicated in my head, because then we need one for each and they're probably going to be almost the same.
I think it will further.
You can actually, the what you said?
Switch.
Let's just try typing it out and then you can actually see why I think there's a much clearer solution. So alright, let's just do
What to do if value equals select value?
So we then have matching products is equal to, what do I need to do here to find the matching products?
It's filter.
It's value in the shipping.
Filter products, just like the one before, but shipping too. Yeah.
Oh, so you want me to write value here? Okay. And then I can do render products. And then I should do the same thing for Sweden.
Then from the beginning we didn't make all this.
What?
We can make it function. No?
But did you see how much I changed to work with Sweden? And then we can do it with Norway. Notice how I don't actually change these, because I'm not using the value in here. Well, actually, I'm technically using the value directly, so we could just do this. We don't actually need to care what it is. Which is a bit cheaty, but it works very well.
It's a bit what?
It's a bit cheaty, but that's definitely what I would say a cleaner way of solving it. So now we can do, alright, nothing ships to Sweden, nothing ships to, and there's, how much are we gonna wage that it is a casing problem?
Yeah. Because the value in the list on HTML are all small, but on the, yeah.
Let's just make everything lowercase. So in this case, I'm just cheating a bit and then say, I'll take all the countries and make them lowercase and then check if any of that contains the country. So that should hopefully do it. It's really bad when we get no data. So now we can see it works. And now what happens if I start searching? So let's go with something that, so I get carrot, but it only ships to Ireland. Yeah, Iceland. That's a bit annoying that it's actually ignoring this one now. So how would you suppose I would go about doing that? Now we have these two functions. We have this one and this one that look a lot like each other. So what do we do when we have code that looks a lot like each other?
Function.
Stick around other functions.
The solution to everything is JavaScript. It is more functions, and if that has not solved it yet, you have not used enough functions. So what should we call this? Search for products. Maybe. And how about we make it take the name and the country.
Country, yeah.
Alright. So then we can find the matching products by simply doing products dot So let's go with the first one, getting the names. And I'm just going to sort the variables here because we're going to have a lot of them. Alright, so now we get all the ones where the names match.
I will put them now.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Dot map scene dot includes country. And then we actually can search on multiple things in one go.
But why when I was using the same but in long way, it was giving me error always. It's not allowed to write all this in one line.
I mean, you can, if you want to, you can just, you like it like this.
Yeah, what I meant is like when I, for example, I want to filter, for example, I take this array, for example, and I want to lowercase and then including. So not working. It was something wrong happening.
So did you just do like this and then dot includes, ignoring the rest of that right now?
Yeah, and then I will
Yeah,
write
so then the reason why this works is because ships2 is an array, it's not a string. So when you call to lowercase on an array, it doesn't have a function called to lowercase. So it'll just say, I don't know what function you're talking about, and give you an error. So that's why we're doing this map thing, because we're actually, for each country in the array, we are lowercasing it. And then checking if that new array that we get includes the country.
And lowercase that one as well.
Yeah, lowercase all the things.
Okay. I got that error as well.
Yeah,
But
that was annoying.
that's probably what went wrong, I would assume, at least. Alright, so now we need to actually call this down here. So search for products. So we already have, in this case, the value was the name. How do we get the country here?
It's products dot country. No, ship.
Well, that will get me,
No, mapping first products dot map.
but this, it needs to be the country I'm searching for, so it should actually be the value from the select down here. So the easy way is just do this. We're gonna remove that, and we're gonna remove that. Then this function is very, very easy. Calling search for products. And we can move it all the way down here. Paste. And we get the same thing. So now, whenever we change something here, let's see. So this should update values. And if I search for socks, it'll only do that. So now it actually considers both of them, rather than just one of them. And in my opinion, it also makes the code a bit clearer that list just says, yeah, whenever this happens, search for the products, or whenever this happens, search for some new products. And then we have up here, like, we could expand this very, very easy now. If we want to say search on, what other things do we have? Like the rating. We could just add another filter in this chain for the rating, and then boom, we would only get those. It's very, very easy to expand now because we have made some small functions to help us do most of these things.
It seems very easy when you do it.
Yeah, but again, years of practice in figuring out how to order these things will get that. So, you said something else. Yeah, clearing the select again. You wanted to be able to do that. All right. So you said just add an empty one up here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just call it all countries. So the thing here is that you can have the value here in the HTML is the value that the select will have if you select it. This is just the text that will be shown in the dropdown. So that's why I can have them different here if I want to. Just a heads up. But now here, if we just do this, I just clear it and then go to all countries, it'll show nothing at all, which is not what we wanted at all. So somehow we need to either not do this filter or have it always return true if there is no country. So how do you suggest we do that? What?
Well, we create if inside a second filter, like if.
You're on the correct path here, so please keep suggesting.
If value.
We don't have anything called value here. We have something called name and something called country. So which one?
If
So
country.
if country.
If country.
Yep.
Equals empty
No,
string.
not name. Just if country.
We can do if country, and so both of those are
Yeah.
allowed. I would go with just this personally because that'll also take care of things like null and undefined and other stuff. And then I assume you want this moved up here. So what if not country? What should we do then? So the else case. Should I just not return anything?
Just make we can enter all the products.
Yeah, so we wanted to include all of them, so we don't want the filter to remove everything. And how do we tell the filter to keep everything?
So we can just enter.
So if we just return true, the filter will just say, okay, I don't care. Just keep all the things. Let's just go with something that has a lot. So now if we keep changing the countries, and if we go to all countries, we have everything again. And it'll work even if we search for something. So, any questions so far? Or are you just mind blown? How about we take a
Half hour break.
3 hour break.
Half hour
no?
break.
Let's go for 15 till 17:15.
Very smart kid.
I thought it's already sliced.
No, it's for one person.
There's a knife on it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many.
5:15.
We are 7.
Yeah, before I think.